Hello and welcome to the Knicks-Verse. My name is George, and today we're going to talk trades. But before that, if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit that thumbs up button for us. And for us, I mean me and JD. We're going to talk trades. Welcome, JD.
Thank you for having me, George. I'm excited to talk about this topic. Everyone, please stay throughout the video because we're going to talk about a lot of interesting players.
Yes. It's going to be really fascinating. All right, let's go. With the trade deadline coming up on Thursday, March 25th, it's coming down to the wire. It's been discussed that it's probably going to be a very, very calm trade deadline, but you never know. Leon Rose is his first trade deadline coming up. The front office has probably been working hard on trying to find some jewels, some diamonds in the rough, or some undiscovered jewels. The thing that we need to focus on is what players will fit best with this team, the New York Knicks, making this playoff push. Because if they don't add value currently right now for the playoffs, there's really no reason to disrupt the team, in my opinion. JD has his own take. And today we're going to discuss the first player, which is a player that I've already addressed before. I have some more takes on it to kind of flesh it all out. JD, you want to take it over?
All right. Victor Oladipo. He is 28 years old. So he is right in the middle of, his prime. His last 5 games, he's averaged 27 points per game, 5.5 assists, 4.6 rebounds. He's shooting 42% from the field and 34% from the three-point line. Now, one of the pros with Victor Oladipo is he is a strong defender. Now, he has always been a strong defender. His defense has slightly dipped, and that's due to, some athleticism that he's lost due to injury. But he still remains a strong defender. That would be an asset to the Knicks, especially with Tom Thibodeau at the helm. Scoring ability. This is a player that can score, from the three-point line. He can score from mid-range. He can drive to the basket. He can create fouls. He's a very savvy offensive player. And so his ability to score is something that, has been a topic of conversation with the Knicks in terms of, especially in the fourth quarter, having that guy that can get you that bucket. So Victor Oladipo has that ability to do that. So that would be also something that will be welcomed here with the Knicks. But on the con side, he's dealt with efficiency, issues throughout his career. Even though he's scoring 27 points per game his last 5 games, he's still only shooting 42%. And for a guard, 42% is still a little bit on the lower side that you would want to see at that position. Yeah. So efficiency is something that, Knick fans, he's a volume scorer. So although he's a scorer, he does need a lot of attempts to get his average. And injury history. This is a big topic here. Injury history. Oladipo, he is a free agent after the year. So if you're going to give up something or you're going to trade for him now, do you invest long term? And if you do, what does that contract look like? Does it look like a 3-year deal? Do you try to get a 2-year deal? I mean, we would all obviously would love a 2-year deal with any player, but that's not how the market works. And so injury history is something that we have to take into account. My take on Oladipo is if I can get him for a second round pick and it's a 2023, 2024 second round pick, and maybe a end of the bench player on our team, then I would strongly consider it just so we can make a strong playoff push. Because I think the Knicks have gotten to a point where if we don't make the playoffs, it can be actually viewed as a disappointment because we've gotten this far into the season and we've been in the playoff picture all along. So it would actually probably be a disappointment if we just fall off, don't even make it. Right. So Oladipo could be viewed as a rental. If it's just for a second round pick, I wouldn't mind losing a second round pick because you can always replace that in the NBA, especially if it's a future second round pick. However, if it's what is being reported that they want, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Basically, the Rockets would want if they were going to trade to the Warriors, because there was talk about that, they want one of the Warriors' top assets, either the 2021 pick from Minnesota, which it's a top 3 pick, or Wiseman. That's
hang up that phone. Hang
So this is just a cost issue, really. I mean, what would it cost to bring him in? But there's a lot of other issues with him, like you mentioned, the health concerns. My main thing is the salary demands. He turned down a Rockets 2-year, $45.2 million offer. And before that, he turned down the Pacers extension of $25.2 million a year, $112 million for 4 years. So he's going to want a max $145 million for 4 years, and that's at $36 million or so. That's way too much for an injury-prone guy who his efficiency is low. And then there's a weird thing about this Miami crush. Like, what the heck is that? I mean,
state tax. That's the crush. No state tax.
Yeah. Oh, well, all right. Well, then this guy is just all about the money, and I don't think that's going to mesh well with these Knicks.
Hey, he's declining these contract offers. He might be all about the money because he's surely betting on himself, and for an inefficient player, you might be getting bad advice. But we'll see what happens.
So I think JD and I are pretty clear. Leon, that's a big thumbs down. No on Oladipo. I don't even think he's worth even the risk. If we get him for something cheap, it's just going to be a disaster.
If it's a second round pick,
yeah, but
for a few months we can get that back.
If it's just a second round pick, Miami will do that.
Yeah.
So I think Oladipo's out. Okay, next one. Okay, the next trade target is Chicago Bulls Zach Lavine, who's having an outstanding season. I mean, it's just a fantastic season. He's lighting it up. And JD, you want to set it up for us?
Zach Lavine just turned 26 years old on March 10th. So it was just a few weeks ago. Just turned 26. His last 5 games, he's averaging 29 points per game, 4.6 rebounds, 4 assists, shooting almost 59% from the field. Wow. Almost 49% from 3-point range. This is just not 5 games. This has been something all season. And one of the pros we have is he's getting better and better. I mean, this player has been ascending at a rapid pace, at an elite pace, at a star pace. And so he continues to get better. And this is, someone that came off, a pretty bad injury a few seasons ago. So this is something that's very, very good to see. Athleticism. He is still one of the most athletic, if not the most athletic guard in the NBA. And so that athleticism has allowed him to produce the numbers that he's produced, because he relies a lot on athleticism,
he's a bucket.
Yeah, he's a bucket. He's a bucket. Now on the con side, he's a decent defender.
Is he?
And I'm being modest.
Yeah.
I'm being modest.
Yeah. I think you're being kind.
When I put that on the bullet point, I think I was being a little modest. But because he's so athletic, it's one of those players that I just feel just needs the proper coaching, right? He just needs that system, and here I feel he can become a solid defender with the system, the assistant coaches that we have, the culture that we're building, the demands of our coaching staff with Mike Woodson on the bench, holding players accountable. So that could be something that could become a strength here. Now, the other one is, can he be the guy? The guy. Can he beat that person? And the reason I have that as a con right now,
number one?
Right. Because he would be viewed as a max player if we get him, right? You would have to pay him that. He's not coming here and then after his contract's over, he's going to be a discount. So we will be paying him as the guy. His age, we would be getting him to be the guy, right? His age fits our timeline.
So he's 26 now?
He just turned 26.
At 28, he'd be getting a max contract.
Right. And he would fit with Julius Randle. He would fit with some of the timelines of our player. And the reason I ask that is also because, for whatever reason you want to say, whether he hasn't been surrounded by the right team, he has been surrounded by talent throughout his career, and so he hasn't yet been in a winning situation. And so whether it's unfair or not, that's just the type of things that follow you when you put those numbers and your teams are not winning. Remember, Devin Booker was just facing that. And then now this year, some of those things have changed, albeit he has Chris Paul. But this is what I'm saying. is it he needs a better situation, or is it something that can he be that person? So I would love to have him. The only thing is, for a guy like Zach Lavine, we may have to give up a lot, but
Yeah,
he might be worth it.
we're talking about Obi, Knox, Frank, and at least 2 first-round picks.
And that still might not get it done, but it might, because they're definitely gonna want RJ.
Well, that's they're not gonna get RJ.
They're
Here's some of
gonna
the here's some of the issues for me. It's he has a history already with Thibs, and Thibs got rid of him for Jimmy Butler. So that makes me, kind of like a little concerned. Like, what's the deal there? So maybe this whole conversation is moot, because maybe it's not even on the table. I know it's been just rumored, but it may not be anything really viable. And the other thing, like you mentioned about the defense, can he defend well enough? So that's another issue. And he's definitely going to be a max contract guy. And lastly is, can he mesh with this current Knicks team chemistry that we have? This amazing chemistry that's developing, the cake that's baking, that I keep talking about. Could he disrupt it too much? I don't know. I don't know much about him, his character and everything, because obviously he hasn't been a Knick or anything. So I don't know. Those are the concerns for me. But his numbers are outstanding. He is just, like we were talking about, he's just a bucket, and he can get to the rim. He gets fouled. His offensive game is completely well-rounded. He's totally versatile and tremendous outside shooter right now.
I think he'll be someone that the Knicks ultimately, you never know, right? The Bulls have, right now they're barely in the play-in picture.
Oh yeah, that was the other thing we wanted to touch on. The like, before there were rumors about Lavine because the Bulls were going south, and then they turned it around for a little while. And same thing happened with Beal, but now
they're reeling again. And so that's why we have him as a target, because you don't know if the organization in a few days wakes up and says, if they lose the next few games and they say, let's try to get the best we can now, because next year they may not have as much leverage. Everyone knows he's a free agent. And so sometimes organizations, would rather give a player up before his free agent year if they know it's not going to be a long-term relationship, because you're able to leverage more, a bigger return.
Would you give up quickly for him?
Come on, man. Why are you doing this to me, man? Listen, if I have to give up quickly to get Lavine, but I can keep RJ quickly, I see you in Chicago when we go there to play you.
Okay. All right. So Zach Lavine is someone of definite interest. It's just, again, what the cost will be. So we need those wizards in the front office to pull off a miracle for this. But this is another one where they could wait and get him in 2 years, because you never know. The Bulls could continue being shit, and the Knicks can sweep in and get him, or they can get him next season for less. All right, this one I've already talked about before in a different video, Bradley Beal, because that was it was a fever pitch for a while. Beal to the Knicks, come on, let's go. And remember he sat out when the Knicks played the Wizards. All right, I'm gonna hand this one off to JD so he can give his feelings about it.
Well, now again, just like we mentioned with Lavine, but more so with Bradley Beal, the team has been awful. I think they've only won 1 game since the All-Star break, and so now it becomes a situation again as an organization. Do you understand that the Wizards are not going anywhere, and would it be best to get rid of him now or in the offseason? Bradley Beal is 27 years old, so he is entering his prime, what people would consider entering your prime years. His last 5 games, he's averaging nearly 30 points per game, 4 assists, 3.6 rebounds, 56% from the field goal stripe, and 35.7% from 3-point range. He has a complete offensive game. This guy can shoot from 3-point range, from mid-range. He can pull up. He can drive. He's fast. He's nimble. He's savvy. He can play off ball too. That's another pro, is that he can play off ball. This is a guy that you can use, in screens, kind of like a Klay Thompson, just because of his ability to shoot the ball. So he has a complete offensive game, and playing off ball could be, something that would be an asset to our offense, because he doesn't necessarily need the ball all the time to get you the same amount of points that he would with the ball. And
that's
so
a big plus.
Yeah, that's a big plus with him. He's a below average defender. And again, I think I'm being modest when I put that bullet point.
You're being kind.
Bradley Beal. Now, I'm just looking ahead and thinking with Tom Thibodeau, they would become, average to above average. And the other thing, is he a star player? It's a big question, because this is a guy that's going to demand a lot whenever it's time to talk contract, his next contract. If we trade for him, he's going to demand a haul. So those are components of a star. Is he a star? Because when you look at the performance of the team, he was with John Wall. Now he's with Russell Westbrook. I mean, James Harden won with Russell Westbrook, and you see what James Harden is doing in Brooklyn, right? And so Bradley Beal is not winning with Russell Westbrook. He's barely winning. And so his points, are they translating to wins? They haven't been. So a big question mark, especially for the Knicks, considering what you may have to give up to get this player. Does he check that box for you? Because you would be potentially paying or giving up to get him is of a superstar player.
Yeah, we'd have to give up RJ,
and so
to get him, and probably 3 first rounders at least. RJ and some other players. The price is so high for Beal. So I've already been down on him before for the defensive issues and all the points you just made. And this rumor died out. But because the Wizards are now spiraling in a nosedive again, you never know. In the next few days, things could pop up. And sometimes when things are quiet, that's when there's more activity.
And if not, the next few days in the off season, because of the World Wide West rumors, in terms of World Wide West talking, through back channels to kind of convince him to demand a trade here. So, but if it means RJ, I think we can move on to the next trade target.
Yes. Move on to the next one
that we're going to talk about is Lonzo Ball. Lonzo Ball is 23 years old. In his last 5 games, he's averaged 11.8 points per game, 8.6 assists, 4 rebounds. He's shooting 40% from the field, 37.5% from the 3-point strike. Now, when we talk about adding a player, which is going to be the theme today, we're going to talk about pros and cons. What are the positives? What are the negatives about having the player on the New York Knicks? So with Lonzo, his size as a 6'6" point guard is one of the pros, because that is with the way the NBA is going today, having size at that position. You look at Ben Simmons and you look at Luka Doncic, you look at a lot of these guards that are playing that position. It is an asset in today's game. Lonzo is an elite defender. So when you have that size and you are an elite defender, you're adding, a component that Thibodeau loves, which is defense. So you're strengthening your perimeter defense. And he's an improving shooter. Every year that Lonzo has been in the NBA, he has improved his shooting percentage year to year. And so far, he's on pace to do that this year again. But now when we look at the cons, consistency has been, an area where he's needed improvement. He is a poor free throw shooter, right? So he needs to continue to make that improvement. And the biggest con, in my estimation, is he's a restricted free agent. And it's a con because it's a tough decision for the front office on, do you get him now, understanding that you would have to give up something, right? Or do you risk the chance of waiting to free agency and running the risk that another team comes under the radar, offers him a creative contract, poison pill contract? We all remember Jeremy Lin. And then that, and then you lose him. You lose the opportunity to get him. So
there's a lot of risks.
Yeah.
A lot of risks involved there.
A lot of risks with Lonzo Ball. And my take on Lonzo Ball is I think he would be an asset to our team. I think he would be part of the solution. I'm so on the fence with him. And
you think he's a long-term solution?
Yes, I think he would be, but I'm so on the fence with Lonzo Ball because of, ready for this, LeVar Ball.
Papa.
LeVar Ball. You just saw that he said this is a player that's still on the New Orleans Pelicans, and he says he can't. That Lonzo can't stand New Orleans. I
Yeah.
mean, what do you think? This is a player that has, this is a person that has also talked about, different comments involving LeBron James, the Lakers. I mean, that's the Lakers market. What do you think would happen in the biggest media market of the world, where, mainstream media would?
I'm going to jump in on that point, just because I think we got to give LeVar some credit. He has mellowed out tremendously from the first season. When he was all over the place, he was annoying the hell out of the Lakers. I think partly why they wanted to get rid of him, Lonzo, is because of LeVar. But I think LeVar took the cues and he calmed down. He really hasn't spoken out much. And I think the recent talk right now, I think LeVar wants to get Lonzo to New York. So I think once he gets here, he might be like, you know what? He's in the right place. And you're right, there's always the danger that he might sabotage the whole atmosphere with his mouth. But I don't know. This is the media capital of the world. And LeVar wants to make money.
But here's the thing. With LeBron, couldn't say much, right? He couldn't say much against LeBron because LeBron had the credibility, he had the cachet, and he had the rings. Although, if he gets his goal of bringing Lonzo to New York, again, my concern is what happens when we have that first 4 or 5 game losing streak, which happens to every NBA team, and in that 4 or 5 game losing streak, Lonzo Ball is shooting 35%, for example.
Yeah.
Right? What is LeVar going to do? The media is going to look for LeVar at every opportunity they can just to get his opinion. And LeVar will say what he feels. And so how would that affect our culture? How would that affect our team? And so that is why that's why I'm so on the fence, because this could turn into a great marriage or this could turn into a mess.
What would get you off the fence? Either way.
What would get me off the fence? There's not much you can do, because since it's LeVar Ball, it's like kind of a wait and see thing. I guess you just take the risk and see what happens. I mean, you would hope that you have a conversation with him privately and you sell him on the fact that, listen, we're going to do everything that we can to put him in the position to succeed. And we are a team that's ascending, that's improving. And we would rather for, you to allow us to coach him and to guide him into the right direction, because this, we understand this could go either way, but let us coach your son and he'll be all right. And then you would hope that he would buy into that.
Well,
if you're
I don't disagree. I don't disagree. I agree. I totally agree. Those are issues. Here's why I sit on this. And I've done already a couple of videos on Lonzo. I'm in favor of Lonzo coming to the Knicks. And the main reason is because it's supply and demand. There isn't much supply. I mean, what other point guard that's 23 years old or 24 is out there that is as good as Lonzo right now? That'll fit with a Thibs system, who's got the size, who can defend, and it's just shooting. I mean, lights out from the three. I think he has more 3-pointers right now. I think he's only second behind Curry.
Yeah, listen,
or at least they may have changed, but definitely a couple weeks ago he was at that level.
Yeah, that's a great point. The only other way the Knicks would address it is the draft, because there's nobody else out there. I mean, what's out there are either over the hill players or stopgap mandates, which I'm not interested. I'm not interested in DJ Augustines. I'm not interested in George Hills. Those are guys that are going to go to championship teams.
No, exactly.
We don't need those guys. So when you look at
Kyle Lowry,
right, like, those guys, Kyle Lowry could be good for the rest of this season, but what's going to happen next season? So it's like, it's time for the Knicks, when they address this position, it's time for the Knicks to get a dynamic young player that could fit the timeline of RJ Barrett, of Julius Randle, and of any other pieces that you feel is the core of the team.
And outside of, let's just play out the scenario. So we get into the playoffs. So our pick is not going to be a high lottery pick. But let's say we get lucky and the Mavs pick is. And we get a top 5 pick. All right, then we might be able to land a really interesting point guard prospect. But point guard is the most difficult position to learn in the NBA, especially as a rookie. So that means that player, he would have to be at that Luka level or LaMelo level. Actually, LaMelo level wouldn't even be high enough. It would have to be Luka level, which is only really one guy, and that's Cade. So it means we're talking about the number 1 pick. So we're not, either they package something and trade up for the number 1 pick, but there's too many variables. There's too many unknowns in that situation. But what is known is Lonzo right now, and I think he wants to be a Knick. He'd be a good fit with the Knick, but there's other issues with him. Are the Knicks willing to trade a lot to get him and then have to pay a lot for him? Are they willing to pay $22 to $25 million a year for him? He really hasn't justified that. He's really more in the 12 to 15 range in reality, but that's not going to do it. He's not going to go for that. So let's say we settle somewhere in around $20 million a year. I might be able to. I could probably stomach $20 million.
You're gonna have to stomach it, George. Is a new NBA. It's a new NBA,
right?
So
and then that's a risk too, because this 3-point shot, wonderment that he's created, it may just be a 1-year thing. It may be.
Yeah.
I doubt it, but it could be.
Yeah,
that's a risk.
That's why I'm so on the fence. Is will the improved shooting translate at the Garden when all the fans are there, pressure's there, national TV, LeVar Ball, like that? Those little ingredients is why I'm so on the fence with it from that. But in terms of Lonzo, the player, what he provides to the team, how everybody else can benefit off his facilitating prowess, like it's a fit, in my opinion.
Yeah. The other problem is, what are the Pelicans going to ask for?
Yeah.
So
listen,
ask for draft picks.
If Elfrid Payton could get us to 20 wins or 21 or whatever it is, and Frank and all that, come on, Lonzo can get us a few more wins than that. So.
Oh yeah. Another thing, I've mentioned this before in the other video, where I think if Leon can pull a trade for Lonzo and JJ Redick, that would truly be something spectacular.
Yeah. The
problem is that the trade proposal that was put out there, which is the Bleacher Report one, was Knicks get Lonzo and JJ, Pelicans get Kev, Knox, Ntilikina, Payton, the 2021 first round pick from Dallas, and the 2021 second round pick from Detroit.
I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
You're gonna end up giving all those picks, and you might not re-sign any of those 2 players because
exactly.
JJ Redick is, how old is he? And then Lonzo will still be.
Well, the thing is, we'll have the bird rights though for Lonzo.
But anything can happen.
Not the early bird rights, I think. Yeah, anything can happen.
But I'm saying, here's the thing. You kind of run into a New York Giants situation with Leonard Williams. You give up draft picks, and then now the player has leverage over contract negotiations. The player knows you've invested that much, so now the player can ask for more than what maybe the market would justify. And what are you going to do if you give up those picks? You have to re-sign Lonzo Ball.
I would do it. I would take the first round pick out. I would give up that second round Detroit pick, which is basically the last first rounder. It's the 31st pick. I think the 31st pick with Elfrid, Frank, and Knox for a player that's not going to re-sign with your team, and we take the salary of JJ Redick off your hands. I mean, that's a good deal. It's a good deal for us, a good deal for them. It's a win-win.
See what happens.
So we'll see what happens. All right, well, that's the Lonzo trade video wrap-up, and on to the next one. All right, this next player is someone that's been rumored. He's out there. He's a guard. Devonte Graham. I like him. I like him as a player. What do you think, JD?
Well, Devonte Graham, he is 26 years old. He's getting paid 1.6 million this year. He'll be a free agent.
Cheap.
And so, since his return from injury, he's averaged 11.2 points per game, 3.3 assists, a rebound, 41.7 from the field goal, and 44.7% from the three-point line. That's not bad. Now, scoring ability is one of his strengths. This is a player that we all know. He came to the Garden and lit us up.
Yeah.
If you remember that game,
Yeah.
where he's
having a down year this year though. Last year he was really he hit 38% of his 3-pointers, 46 from the corner, 18.2 points per game last season. This year 13.3, 36% from the 3.
And that's
even his assists have gone down from 7.5 to 5.3.
And it's mostly because, he's a high IQ player coming from Kansas. So that's one of his strengths. He's a smart player. He can play within a system. But as you mentioned with his down year, and I have as a con, is injury risk. That's been part of the contributing factor to the down year is his injury. He had knee soreness. He's had a groin strain. So he's dealt with some leg injuries, and I'm very, very wary. Small guys already dealing with leg injuries early in their career. And efficiency, that's something that he has to improve on. If you look at his previous seasons, he's shooting at 39% from the field goal. So although he did have that good year last year, he still wasn't very efficient. And for the Knicks, I want efficient players. And so that's something that he has to improve. He can still improve. He's young. But, and he may come cheap. Charlotte has to figure out what they want to do. They have Rozier, they have Graham. Graham's a free agent this year. Rozier's a free agent after next year. They have LaMelo Ball, who now is a starter for good, and they're going to definitely build around him. And so one of these two guys is not going to be part of their future. And so Devonte Graham could be an underrated pickup here at the deadline because he may not cost much.
He could be a nice little addition, that doesn't cost much. Won't disrupt the team at all because he's a good guy. I think he'd mesh with the team chemistry. He's a pretty decent defender, and he can catch fire sometimes.
Yeah.
And he's a point guard. So, and he wouldn't be expected to start. He wouldn't expect to start, so he would come off the bench. And that would give us. And if we needed him to start, he could.
No. If we get him, he might. He might start.
Do you think he'd start over Rose?
They would probably look to put Rose off the bench and start him. Really look at because if you're bringing him,
so there's a lot of flexibility there.
Yeah, it's a lot of flexibility. Let's see what happens.
So I think we like this one. We like him as a nice little pickup.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, let's jump right into the next guy. Really interesting, very interesting guy who's popped up recently. Norman Powell from the Toronto Raptors.
Norman Powell. Powell he has a player option after this season at 11.6 million. Of the Toronto Raptors last 5 games, he's averaging 27.6 points per game.
The whole season he's exploding. The whole year.
Yeah, he's had a big jump. Look at this.
He's had career highs across the board.
Look at these numbers: 27 points, almost 4 rebounds, 55% from field goal, 49% from the 3-point line, and he's a 3-and-D player. The Knicks.
Yeah,
we've wanted. That's a popular term in the NBA now, 3-and-D players. Well,
he's kind of small though for a 3-and-D, right?
Well, he can shoot the 3.
6'3"?
He can shoot the 3, and he plays defense. So whether he's 6'3" or 6'8", he still qualifies in terms of that ball club. Now
he's just not like a wing.
Right.
Wings usually are 6'5" and up.
Right. He's just not a wing 3-and-D player. He's very passionate. So that I have that as a pro, because that would be welcomed here at the Garden. You can imagine with the crowd, there and him, yelling and getting amped up. He's a real passionate
and
player.
He's a thief. He's a thief, man. 1.2 steals a game.
Yeah.
I love that.
And as you mentioned, one of my cons for him is size for his position. He's only 6'3". So, sometimes, although he is solid defensively, there are times where he has some matchups against bigger guards that he has trouble with. So size for his position is a slight concern for mine. And playmaking for others. I don't think he's ever averaged 2 assists per game ever in his career. And this year he's getting about 30 minutes per game. So you have enough minutes. You're scoring that many points. So you're getting the touches. He can play make for himself. But
he's not a playmaker for others.
But he can't play make. He's not playmaking for others. So, this is an interesting one, very under the radar one, and it's because when you look at the Toronto Raptors, they have already paid VanVleet. They have already paid Siakam, right? They like Chris Boucher.
They still have Lowry on the books.
They still have Lowry, and so how much more can they pay internally? Is the question. And so this could be a player that, with that GM, and we all know, Ujiri, he's very, very savvy. So, we will have to be smart here, but this is an under the radar sleeper one.
Yeah. This is the main problem with this is that, for all the reasons you just outlined, that we just talked about, a contender is going to come in and snatch him up. I could see a Miami coming after him. I could see the Sixers even coming after him. Because it's not necessarily going to cost that much. And if he can be that piece, he's having a career year. So if he can be that piece to kind of get you to the finals, some team might overpay.
Yeah, this will be a player. This will be a player the Knicks will have competition for, definitely in the in the trade market. So,
yeah. All right. So, the next player, Evan Fournier.
All right.
We're gonna roll right in, man. We're gonna roll right in.
All right. Evan Fournier, he is 28 years old. So this is a player. It feels like to me like he's played forever, and I couldn't believe
he's another bucket.
Yeah, I couldn't believe when I saw his age. I'm like, he's 28. Wow. It just feels like
I thought he was like 32 or something. The balding hair too.
He sure looks like
he should just shave that shit.
His last 5 games, he's averaging 21 points per game, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, 49% field goal, and almost 44% from the 3-point line. He's an elite shooter. This guy can shoot from anywhere on the court. He's always been a good 3-point shooter, very good 3-point shooter. He's a high IQ player. So that would be something that will be welcomed here with the Knicks. Let's continue to add, high IQ players to surround, RJ and Julius Randle. And, the cons, though, is he's an injury risk. He's dealt with injuries throughout his career. He's missed games already this season. And he's a weak defender. So this is a player that, he's a little slow-footed. And so he's not a strong defender, and that would be a con. Although again, I always have hope that with Thibodeau, anybody that's a weak defender could become adequate. So this is interesting. This is an interesting one. This is another one kind of like Norman Powell, where the Orlando Magic, I see them as a selling team potentially here because they've had some of the same core players. Fournier has been there for a while. Vucevic has been there for a while, and they can't seem to get anything going. So this could be a player that could be on the move here in a few days.
Well, he lit up the Nets for 31 points.
Yeah,
the other night, and they beat the Nets. Orlando almost we barely survived the Magic, and then they totally took down the Nets.
Well, maybe he's the missing piece.
Yeah, Thibs actually in the post game, Thibs hinted at that. He's like, the Magic, they've been struggling, but then this game they got a couple guys back, and that was his first game back was against the Knicks, and he scored 23 against us. And we saw him. He's always hurt us. He's one of those guys, but he's a bucket. He could be interesting pickup. He could be interesting.
See what happens.
Yeah, I think it's a little problematic in the end. I think maybe we
and if not, he could be a free agent target there for, depending on what he's asking for.
That's what it feels better like. Once we figure out some of these other pieces that are really like, once we solidify our point guard situation, he could be that small forward pickup.
Yeah, because if you are going to build around RJ, if so, what we've heard that RJ and Randall are untouchables, Fournier could be a good complementary player to their games.
Yeah. All right, this next trade is also another one that I've touched on before, but it's actually got life because Terry Rozier is having quite a season, and the Knicks have always had a fascination with him as a player. JD?
All right. Scary Terry. Terry Rozier is 27 years old. His last 5 games, he's averaging 20 points per game, 3 rebounds, 3 assists. He's shooting 42% from field and almost 35% from the three-point line. Now, Terry has been an improved shooter. So he's had improved shooting this season. As of right now, he has career highs in field goal and the three-point range, at 48% from the field goal and 42% from the three-point line. And he's not afraid of the big stage. And, that's a big plus here because he would be coming to a big market and in a pressure environment. And him coming from Boston previously before Charlotte, he's been in big playoff games. He's been in big moments. And he's a very passionate player. So that's a plus. Now, on the negative side, his size as a guard, he's a 6'1" guard, and that is not really, considered the prototypical size for a point guard. And he's not a facilitating point guard. He's a scoring guard. And you can make the case that although he's not as good as Terry today, we may already have a Terry Rozier type player on the Knicks in Emmanuel Quickley. So because of that, me personally, I would pass on Terry Rozier. You might have to give up a first rounder. And again, we have a similar player because I see Emmanuel Quickley as that Lou Williams, early Terry Rozier, Boston, in terms of what he projects to. So I would pass, but I would not be mad at all if we added him because he has had a dynamic and an outstanding season.
Terry's field goal percentage is 58.6. He's shooting .420 from the 3-point for the season.
Yeah.
54% overall. The 2-point overall field goal percentage. He is what we really hope in terms of offensive efficiency that Quickley can become. Now, Quickley's range is much better, but we may not have to he may just be, we can just add him, not give up Quickley. So it's not like it's either or. It's just adding another spark plug, another guy who can just light it up from the outside, and he can get to the rim too.
Yeah, and very quickly, another note: he has one more year at $17.9 million for the 2021-2022 season. So it's a player that we would also have to consider after next year about what we would want to do with him, whether we get him at the deadline or we make a move in the offseason. And it's something Charlotte has to think about with LaMelo Ball, who they want to surround him with, because right now they have a few guards there and they're going to try to figure out what's the best fit for LaMelo Ball as their franchise player.
They're asking for, this is what some of the rumored trade proposals are out there. Someone like basically they're asking for a Kevin Knox, Elfrid Payton. They're not asking. This is what people are throwing around. But a 2021 first round pick from the Knicks, and 2 second rounders. That sounds pretty rich to me.
See what happens. What happens.
But he would be an interesting because he fits in. He fits. He's young. He's on the rise. His efficiency is improving. I think he straightened some things out in his game because he had a couple of kind of like he had plateaued for a little bit, but now he's spiking up again. He could be an interesting guy. He could be. I mean, I could totally see him coming on this team and adding. I mean, he could start, or he could be in the second unit too, and provide a tremendous offense in the second unit, which would be nice because the reason that Julius and RJ play so many minutes is because that second unit is so inconsistent in producing points. So if you have a guy like him, and let's say, Rose still keeps starting, so quickly and Rozier together, that would be some offense. So this is a very intriguing one. I wouldn't mind seeing Terry Rozier in the orange and blue. This next player is another Magic player, none other than Terrance Ross, who can light it up. Mr. Streak himself. JD?
Terrance Ross is just turned 30 years old, so he's a young 30 in the middle of his prime. He's going to be a hot player here in the rumor mill, just because of, some of the things that he can offer are going to be stuff that, teams are going to be looking for, especially if you're looking to strengthen your bench or potentially have him even start. And his contract is also going to be attractive because of what he can provide. And based on where the market is going to be going, for the 2021-2022 season, he is going to be making $12.5 million. And the year after that, which is the 2022-2023 season, he's going to be making $11.5 million. So you have $12.5 million and then $11.5 million after this season. In his last 5 games, he's averaging 18 points per game, 4 rebounds, almost 3 assists, 39% from the field goal and 37% from 3. Now, one of the pros I've noted is that he can score from anywhere. This guy can score from 3-point line, from anywhere on the court. He can get hot. He's a solid 3-point shooter, and he is a underrated defender. I know a lot of people look at his build. He has a slim build, but in Orlando, he was getting credit for their early success when they had Markelle Fultz and they were healthy and they were winning. They noted a lot. One of the components was Ross's underrated defense from the bench. And so he's an underrated defender, and under Tibbs, he can become a solid defender.
Yeah.
Now,
and he's having a career high in points, 16 points a game.
Yeah, and he's definitely a scorer. Now, on the other side to it, when you deal with those type of players, when I look at Ross, I think a lot about Jamal Crawford. I think a lot about J.R. Smith. I think a lot about these streaky players, and that's what you get with Ross. He's a very streaky player. And when you deal with streaky players, you deal with consistency issues. And so, he can be inconsistent as well as he can be hot. And that's what you get with these type of players. Shot selection can also be an issue because he can get so hot. When you think about, again, the J.R. Smith.
I don't think there's a shot he doesn't like.
Right. When you think about these players, because the thing is, when you think about players like that they know they can score from anywhere. They can shoot it from anywhere. They can shoot it without even being fundamentally sound in their mechanics. A lot of times Terrance Ross is coming off a screen and he's shooting halfway, at different angles. He's like
sideways sometimes.
Yes. And so the other side to that,
and they go in.
When they go in, it's good, but when it doesn't, they continue to do that, and then it becomes a shot. Yeah, it hurts the team. So, but he's a solid 3-point shooter, and I think I'm not too crazy on him because, again, when you look at those cons, you put that at the Garden in this market under pressure. When those things start happening, people turn on you, and I'm not too crazy on him. Now, with that being said, yes, I would gladly accept him because we would need another scorer, another shooter. I mean, this team needs shooter right now. The Knicks need shooter.
He satisfies that need,
right?
And he doesn't really. I mean, he can he can create a bucket at any time,
right? And so I again, it would be what it takes, but again, he could be a player. Because when we look at free agency, you're going to be looking at players like him. We mentioned Evan Fournier earlier. And what is the contract going to be for those type of players? I mean, the way the market's going right now and the way it's going to continue to grow is, some of these role players are going to demand $14-15 million. And Terrance Ross at $11.5 million in 2022,
Very reasonable.
That could be a bargain. He's averaging 16 points per game, and at 11 million in today's market, that's a good deal. See what
He's
happens.
another guy that there's a lot of might be a lot of competition for from contenders, kind of like Powell. You know, there's been rumors of the Sixers wanting him, getting him and Ennis in exchange for Danny Green, Terrance Ferguson, and their 2021 first round pick, and a second round pick, like maybe the 2023 one. You know, that's starts getting a little steep, but again, his salary is pretty good. So that could be it's something to keep an eye on. And who else should we keep an eye on? Just players that we haven't really, we're not going to do deep dives on, but there's someone to keep an eye on, like Miles Turner. We've heard about him.
Yeah, players, you know, for people to keep, you know, to think about whether we go after or not, but they're going to be players that have already been linked or could come out of nowhere. You mentioned Miles Turner at the center position. There was a report that we were one of 5 teams interested. Andre Drummond, we've already run that. Everybody has had their thoughts about that, so we don't need to say much there. Eric Bledsoe could be a player that could pop up. You know, New Orleans has a glut of guards. Knicks need a guard. Not he's a fit, but again, he's a player that could be.
What's his salary?
I'm not sure.
I think he's up there. I think he's in the 20 plus.
You know, I'm not 100% sure what's his.
What about my boy JJ Redick? If they can't package him with Lonzo, we can weaponize the cap space for Austin Rivers, and that's it. We don't have to give up much, and we suddenly get.
JJ Redick is one. Yeah, Otto Porter Jr. He's a wing, good 3-point shooter. That could be a player. Again, doesn't mean that I would go after him because of the injury risk and the contract and stuff like that. But he could be a player that could pop up. Harrison Barnes and Buddy Hield. Sacramento Kings organization, just like the Magic, can't get out of their way. And so these could be 2 players that they could be looking to move. Buddy Hield specifically has been linked to the Knicks in the past. Harrison Barnes is a wing player. We need a wing player, but his contract, I'm not attracted to that. I don't think the Knicks would want to deal with that. And Jeremy Grant. Yeah. Jeremy Grant is an interesting player because the Pistons signed him. However, you know, is he a part of their future? I know teams have already started to call. The Celtics have been mentioned. And so is he a part of their future, or is he a player that they would be willing to trade now and get some assets?
One thing I could see is the Knicks being a part of like a multi-team deal because we have the cap flexibility, so we might be able to, like, you know, skim off a couple of interesting high second rounders, maybe even a low first rounder to help these contenders that don't have any flexibility, i.e. the Clippers. You know, to help them get a player that they desperately need, and we can facilitate with our cap space. So that's something else to keep in mind.
Yeah, and you know, Eric Bledsoe has 2 more years after this year, at 18 and 19 million.
Okay, so he's I mean, it's still
I know
high, but
I know it was 2
high.
years. But you said 20. Close enough.
18.
I just didn't know if it was 1 year or 2 years, but it's 18 and 19.
It's Eric Gordon. That I always confuse those two.
Yeah.
To me, they were like the same player for many years.
I'm passing on Eric Bledsoe myself.
Yeah.
He's not what we're looking for.
So, you know, really, in summation, there really isn't that much out there. I mean, in reality, that's feels automatic. There really isn't that much.
Yeah, and then also the Knicks are in that weird position to where you have prime assets. You do. You know, you have draft picks, and so you have cap space. And we have needs. You have needs. The Knicks have a little bit of everything. They can facilitate pretty much anything that they want. It's just what is the right move, and that's what the front office is trying to figure out.
Oh, and again, if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit that thumbs up button for us. I have a take on the whole trade situation here. If we can't swing the trade for Lonzo, without sacrificing, something, part of the core, or like we can't really give up that much for him because he's a restricted free agent. We don't know what's going to happen in the offseason. And there's all the problems that we already stated. But I think the Knicks should actually not make a trade for a point guard unless it's for Lonzo. Because we have Derrick Rose, and this little COVID period that we just went through actually may work out in our favor, because my biggest concern is the minutes load. Can he handle starters' minutes? I think he can only handle about 25 minutes a game. Maybe now, and maybe maybe Thibs can be a little more. He can like sit him sometimes, if we need to, so that we can have him fresh for the playoffs. Because I really think, Derrick Rose is an excellent point guard. He's not as good a 3-point shooter as we'd like him to be, but you know what? He can knock down the three when you need it, and he can get to the rim. He creates for his teammates, and we have Emmanuel Quickley. So those two together, I really don't think that the point guard situation, despite what we just saw because of all the injuries, if we can bring in an additional piece, kind of like a Devonte Graham, like a complementary player. We don't necessarily need to trade for a bona fide starting point guard right now, because we also don't know what's going to happen in the offseason. So that's my take on it. And also, it'll give Quickley the opportunity to evolve, because I really believe that he can be a really interesting special player. He's going to be like the prototypical point guard? Probably not. But can he light it up and create floor spacing for everybody? We've already seen that he can do that.
That would be fun, man. I would love to see Lonzo play with Quickley on the
court.
And
the chemistry won't get disrupted.
Lonzo with Quickley on the court, that could be good. That could be good right there, especially Quickley improving, in terms of the offseason, stuff like that. Lonzo with a lot of these guards could be interesting.
All right, well, there you have it. We went through a lot of players. Some players make sense, some players don't, and some players make sense depending on the price. There's a lot of variables here, but I think we've established that the Knicks are in a good position right now. Right, JD?
Yes, sir. They are in a great position. Everything is in their hands in terms of what they want to do and what's the next step. So that is something we're all anxiously watching.
Yep. So JD, how can people, if they want to reach out to you, how can they do so?
They can reach out to me on Twitter at JD Sports Market. Very simple, JD Sports Market. My email will be in the bio if you want to reach out privately. And yeah, pretty much.
Awesome. And you can reach me on Twitter as well at the Knicks-Verse. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit that thumbs up button for us. And see you around the Knicks-Verse.